Good news. My boyfriend and I were finally ready to go public with our relationship, to friends and family alike. Bad news. He suddenly lost his memory, and everything had to start over from scratch. It had taken me 8 years to finally stand by his side, and now I could no longer bear the thought of another 8 years. So I decided to break up with him. When I went to see him one last time, he looked at me and blushed. I asked, confused, "Have you recovered your memories?" He shook his head, then said shyly, "No, but the book says that domineering CEOs like me always end up falling for someone as beautiful and considerate as you. So I thought I'd rehearse it first." My expression twisted slightly as I looked at the man lying on the hospital bed. He was nearly 6'2", with mature, well-defined features. Some domineering CEO, some breathtaking beauty. What kind of ridiculous nonsense was this? I kindly reminded him, "I'm a man, and I'm also your secretary. Whatever's written in that book of yours doesn't apply to the two of us." He immediately bristled, frowning in displeasure. He looked just as fierce as he always had, but the very next second he reached under his pillow and pulled out a garishly colorful book, arguing his case with complete seriousness. "How does it not apply? We're exactly the same as what it says in the book." Confused, I took the book from his hand. Stamped boldly across the cover were a few eye-catching words: "The domineering CEO and his pretty secretary." My eyelid twitched. A bad feeling crept up on me. I flipped through a couple of pages, and an overwhelming wave of old-school romance cliches hit me straight in the face. It was so strong I had to close the book just to breathe. He gripped the little secretary's chin, his voice low and hoarse. "You belong to me." And he furrowed his sexy brows, staring at his little secretary as his reason teetered on the edge of collapse. "Man, you're playing with fire." "Good grief. Please give me back my clean eyes." "Where did you dig up this trash?" Hearing that, the man's frown deepened even further. He snatched the book back from my hands. "It's not trash," I sighed, not in the mood to argue with him. "Fine, fine. If you say it's not, then it's not. But the story in there definitely isn't about us, because I'm about to resign and you're about to marry someone else." "Marry? Me?" The man on the bed looked at me, utterly baffled. A sour ache rose in my chest. I lifted my hand, gently smoothing his hair, then straightened his collar. "Yeah. Haven't you heard? Your parents are already arranging a marriage for you." It was probably because they were afraid their son might never fully recover. So his parents decided to plan ahead, find him a good wife who could support him and help manage the family. Now, Jason Carter's memories had been reset to factory settings. He was straight again, and he no longer remembered anything we'd shared. If I barged in right now and told him, "I'm your boyfriend, don't marry another woman," I'd probably be thrown out as a lunatic. And if his parents found out, I could already imagine their reaction. They'd likely feel relieved that their son had forgotten the terrible gay man who once turned a straight guy gay. Impossible. Absolutely impossible. My thoughts snapped back as I looked at the man in front of me, speaking with solemn conviction. Jason's expression was cold and composed. His hands were folded neatly in front of him, as if he were presiding over some important meeting. Logically speaking, the evil female side character shouldn't appear this early. What on earth was he even talking about? "What evil female side character?" I said. "The women your parents introduced you to are all perfectly decent, respectable girls. And you—" I hesitated, then continued softly. "If you really end up liking one of them in the future, try to temper your temper a bit. Don't shout all the time, and don't cling too tightly either. Not everyone can handle how clingy you are." I swallowed down every struggle in my heart, sounding like a widow giving final instructions before letting go, asking for nothing more than for the person in front of me to live well. "Jason, don't blame me. How many 8-year stretches does a person get in their lifetime? Enough for me to walk all the way back to your side again? You're running away with the baby already?" The emotions I'd just painstakingly worked myself into shattered instantly at his words. "What are you talking about?" "Like those stories, you know. Married into a rich family. Mr. Carter gives birth to triplets, or something like that. Isn't this moving a bit too fast? I haven't even done that with you yet, and you're already planning to take the kid and run." "Jason Carter, are you sure you've just lost your memory, and not your mind?" The man shot me a glance, then lowered his head. For some reason, I caught a trace of grievance in that motion. "You've got a really sharp tongue." I stared speechlessly at the man sitting on the hospital bed, fiddling with his fingers. For a moment, I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He used to say that about me, too. Only back then, after saying it, He'd always lean in and steal a couple of kisses anyway. Even if it's poisoned, I still like kissing it. That was his usual way of backing down whenever I was about to scold him. Fine, I said. My mouth's poisonous. Then I'll stop sitting here and annoying you, okay? I was only saying it, I hadn't even moved yet, but he suddenly grabbed onto my sleeve. No, I like it even if your mouth is sharp. The book says this is exactly the personality you're supposed to have. That's why I like you. When someone is truly speechless, they laugh. That was me, right then. I snatched the book out of his hand and lightly smacked him on the head with it. What liking or not liking? I think taking this book away from you is the sensible thing to do. He clung tightly to my sleeve with one hand, refusing to let go, while stretching out the other, trying desperately to reach the book. Stubborn, clumsy, overflowing with childish persistence. I was used to his serious side, his commanding presence, his maturity. Seeing him like this now felt oddly fresh, and somehow unfamiliar in the most dangerous way. Bro, I'm here. Are you okay? The person hadn't even arrived yet, but his voice got there first. The moment I heard that all-too-familiar voice, I instinctively replied, not really. Jason Carter looked up at me, confusion written all over his face. What's wrong? The door was suddenly shoved open, and a young man dressed impeccably, head to toe in designer brands, came charging in. The moment he entered, he squeezed me aside, grabbed Jason's arm, and immediately started crying, loudly and dramatically. Bro, how are you? I only just found out you were in a car accident. I was so worried I couldn't sleep. Boo-hoo-hoo. The newcomer was Jason's cousin, and also someone who had always made me uncomfortable. Jason froze for a couple of seconds before forcefully pulling his arm back. Who are you? He asked bluntly. Didn't my parents say I'm an only child? He asked the second half while looking straight at me. I sighed and explained, he's your cousin. Seeing this, the young man cried even harder. Bro, you really don't remember me at all? Jason shot him a glance, his expression visibly resistant. I don't even remember my own parents, he said flatly. What do you think? The cousin didn't look discouraged in the slightest. He kept chatting away, asking questions nonstop, but Jason never really warmed up to him. Eventually, he stopped talking and turned to me instead. Hey, Secretary Chi, I've been here for ages. Don't you think you should at least pour me a glass of water? I raised an eyebrow with no intention of responding. Forget it, he continued breezily. Make it coffee instead. Go downstairs and get me a Starbucks. Add sugar. I rolled my eyes, just about to snap back when Jason spoke first. Hey, he said coolly. Who exactly are you ordering around? The cousin turned back, immediately putting on a smile. Oh, come on, bro. I know he's your secretary, but what's the difference between us? Your secretary is basically my secretary. I'm just asking him to run a quick errand. Jason's expression darkened. His face fell, and his brows slowly knitted together. And just like that, the air in the room changed. First, he said coolly, from a professional standpoint, he's a highly paid assistant I hired for his skills, not your personal errand boy. You have no right to talk down to him or give him orders. I nodded in agreement. Even with amnesia, Jason Carter's brain was clearly still functioning. Second, he continued, on a personal level, he's your brother-in-law. As the younger one, how can you ask a senior to run errands for you? I take back what I just thought. Brother-in-law? Who? Jacob looked confused, completely bewildered. Mr. Jacob, your brother is currently not thinking clearly and needs rest. Please come back later. Before he could react, I half-dragged the cousin out of the hospital room. Once the door closed, I turned back and stared at Jason seriously. What nonsense are you talking about? It's happening, he said calmly. What's happening? The cold-mouthed tsundere wife refuses to admit the relationship. The CEO is heartbroken and decides to punish his wife thoroughly in bed until he finally confesses. He said all of this with that impossibly mature, handsome face, completely expressionless. I slapped a hand over his mouth, veins practically popping in my forehead. Jason, Carter. He obediently stopped, then puckered up and kissed my palm. Disgusted, I yanked my hand away and wiped it on his sleeve. I seriously wanted to grab him and shake him until he gave me back my reliable, steady, quiet boyfriend. Hey, Alex, you're here too. I turned around. Jason's parents were standing at the door. On the bench outside the hospital ward, Jason Carter's parents deliberately called me out to speak with them. Alex, Jason's mother said gently, holding my hand, you've really worked hard. We rely on you for the company, and now you're taking care of Jason as well. Without you, we don't even know how overwhelmed we'd be. It's nothing, Auntie, I replied softly. These are all things I should be doing. As a secretary, managing my boss's work was my responsibility. As a boyfriend, taking care of the person I loved was also my responsibility. It was just that this word, responsibility, I didn't know how much longer it could last. Alex, she continued, hesitating for a moment. To be honest, Jason's father and I have been discussing Jason's marriage recently. We wanted to ask for your opinion. My palm clenched tightly. Are you asking if I have someone to recommend? I said hesitantly. I'm sorry, I might not. My words trailed off, and I silently scolded myself for being so indecisive. Hadn't I always known this day would come? So why, now that it actually had, did I feel so unwilling to accept it? Jason's mother shook her head and gently interrupted me. No, what I want to ask is, Alex, would you be willing to marry Jason? Marry him? I was startled, forcing myself to stay calm as I looked at the middle-aged couple in front of me, who looked even more uneasy than I was. Uncle, Auntie, I'm a man. I struggled to get the words out, my mind in complete chaos. The couple exchanged a glance, disappointment flickering in their eyes. Jason's mother began to sob. I know this puts you in a difficult position, she said through her tears. But Jason's father had someone look into it. They said holding a wedding, bringing him some joy, might help him recover faster. You know Jason's temper. His father and I can't just arrange a marriage with someone random. You're the one who stayed by his side the longest. If he recovers his memories, he wouldn't blame you for this. Alex, as parents, we really don't have any other choice. Judging from Jason's behavior earlier, he would probably agree. But some things still needed to be said properly. Auntie, please don't cry, I said quietly. I can marry him. But I'm afraid the Jason he is right now might not agree. The woman who had just been crying wiped her tears away, her voice firm once more. That's not something you need to worry about. This marriage, no matter what he thinks right now, will happen. After Jason Carter's parents went back into the ward, I stood there frowning, my thoughts in turmoil. What exactly was going on? I couldn't make sense of it, no matter how much I thought about it. In the end, I decided to take things one step at a time. When I pushed open the door to the hospital room, the whole family looked like they'd already reached an agreement. The moment I walked in, they smiled and beckoned me over. If it weren't for the fact that I genuinely liked Jason Carter, I might have thought I was about to be tricked into a marriage. Jason stretched out a hand toward me, signaling for me to come over. Taking advantage of the fact that Uncle and Annie Carter were still focused on me, I quickened my steps and slapped his hand away. Jason let out a muffled grunt and looked up at me, a hint of grievance actually showing on his face. I pressed my lips together awkwardly. It wasn't my fault. I'd already gotten used to keeping my distance from him in front of other people. Jason's mother reached out and held my hand again. Alex, she said warmly, I've already talked things through with Jason. Once his health improves a bit more and he can stand properly, the two of you can go register the marriage. If you want a wedding, your uncle and I will arrange one. If you don't, then we won't. It's entirely up to you. I hesitated for a moment and started to stammer. About the wedding. Of course we're having one, Jason cut in decisively. I want the whole world to know that Alex is my... Without even turning around, I reached out with perfect accuracy and pinched Jason's mouth shut. Uncle, Auntie, I said calmly. I'm fine with anything. It mainly depends on whether work at the company will be too busy. All right then, Auntie said happily. Your father and I will take care of the arrangements. Father and mother? My face instantly heated up. Feeling awkward, I answered softly, Okay. After seeing Uncle and Auntie off, I returned to the hospital room and found Jason Carter still pouting, his lips stuck in the exact shape they'd been in when I pinched them earlier. I couldn't help but laugh softly. What's wrong? Are your lips permanently molded now? I can still pinch them up like that. Oomph. Jason answered through his nose, and it startled me so much I almost burst out laughing. My eyes curved instinctively, amusement slipping out despite myself. I sat down by his bed and tapped his lips lightly. What's got you upset? Why don't you want to have a wedding? He repeated it again, his lips jutting out even farther. I'd originally planned to explain it properly, how our wedding might attract public scrutiny, how it could affect the company, how time was tight. But looking at his childish sulking, I suddenly didn't feel like being serious at all. I tilted my head, pretending to think. Maybe because our first wedding is destined not to go smoothly. Jason sat up abruptly, his broad upper body looming over me. Why not? Even after all these years, I still wasn't used to the pressure he gave off when he moved so suddenly. I unconsciously leaned back. Because, isn't running away from the wedding a standard trope in CEO novels? I tilted my head and asked back. Then I watched, completely stunned, as the tall, imposing man in front of me flushed and twisted shyly, like a bashful girl. He flopped straight back down and pulled the blanket over his face. Laughing, I reached over and tugged at the blanket. "Hey, get up! You'll suffocate yourself." He shot back up again and immediately clung to me. I scratched under his chin, teasing him like a puppy. "So you're really that happy just playing along?" Jason turned his head away, refusing to let me tease him, and buried his face into the crook of my neck. After a long moment, he finally muttered in a muffled voice, "Yeah, I'm happy." After leaving the hospital and returning to the small home Jason and I shared, the smile I'd worn all day finally faded, and I couldn't help letting out a quiet sigh. Right now, the Carter family was resorting to this plan only to help Jason Carter recover as quickly as possible. But what about after Jason got better? Could I really spend a lifetime with him like this, in a relationship that was never clearly defined, never fully spoken out loud? The next day after work, I carried my lunchbox to the hospital as usual to visit Jason. But this time, he wasn't alone in the ward. Lex? There was only one person who called me that, Jason's older sister, Sharon Carter. "Senior," I exclaimed. "You're back already?" I excitedly set down the lunchbox and looked at her. "What else could it be for?" she said with a smile. "Obviously because of this brat." "How have things been overseas, Senior? Did the project go well?" She'd always been someone who focused on academics and didn't socialize much, so we rarely talked. Seeing her after so long, I suddenly had 1,000 questions I wanted to ask. She patted my head, her tone relaxed. "Yeah, everything went pretty smoothly. Alex, I'm hungry." Right when Sharon and I were talking, Jason suddenly cut in. It felt a little strange, but I still picked up the lunchbox I'd placed near his bed and handed it to him. "If you're hungry, then eat. Feed me." Before I could respond, Sharon Carter spoke first. "Oh, give it a rest, Jason. You injured your head, not your hands. Stop ordering Alex around and eat by yourself." Honestly, I felt the same way. But I still thoughtfully set up the tray table on his bed and laid out the food for him. Then I turned to her and asked, "Senior, have you eaten yet? Want me to treat you?" She smiled gently. "Sure. How about that Malatang place near our university? I've been craving it ever since I went abroad." "Sounds great." Just before leaving, I suddenly remembered something and turned back to Jason, who still hadn't moved at all. "Make sure you finish the porridge." I reminded him. I simmered it for a long time. At 9 in the evening, after finishing dinner with Sharon and seeing her home, I turned around and headed back to the hospital. It had been a busy day, and I still hadn't spent much time talking with Jason. When I arrived at the ward, I saw Jason Carter sitting there alone, staring blankly ahead. The takeout containers in front of him looked completely untouched. I checked more closely. Only the porridge was finished. I was so annoyed I almost laughed. My tone hardened as I asked, "Jason Carter, why are you wasting food?" Jason crossed his arms and leaned back, looking every bit like a spoiled young master. "Shouldn't you be asking what I'm upset about instead?" I sighed. "Who even knows with you? You're upset every day." Jason suddenly grabbed my forearm, completely changing the subject. "Do you like my sister?" I was instantly alarmed. "What are you talking about? She already has a husband, don't you know that?" Jason nodded to himself, completely unfazed. "Then you're secretly in love with her, right?" I honestly didn't know whether to laugh or cry. How could someone be this good at wild guesses? "If I liked your sister," I shot back, "why would I agree to marry you?" Jason nodded again, but clearly didn't agree. "Got it, you're treating me as her substitute." That was an angle I'd never even considered. I instinctively wanted to deny it, but my gaze unconsciously lingered on Jason's face. He really did resemble Sharon a little, especially around the eyes and brows. They were both tall, too. Jason was almost like a gender-swapped version of his sister. "I look like the female version of my sister, don't I?" Hearing him voice my exact thought caught me completely off guard. Before I could stop myself, I nodded. By the time I snapped back to my senses, Jason Carter was already wearing a cold, distant expression. I'd only ever seen that look on him when he was dealing with other people. Seeing it now made my mood sour as well. I almost wanted to question him. "We've always interacted like this. You were never like this before." But remembering his condition, I forced myself to calm down and decided to explain things slowly and clearly. "You do look a bit like your sister," I said carefully, But what I feel for Sharon is gratitude and respect. It's not the same as what I feel for you." "Oh?" Jason crossed his arms and looked at me leisurely. "Then what do you feel for me?" I suddenly fell silent. Well, after stammering for a long while, I stiffly changed the subject. "Is your storyline even supposed to develop like this? This is way too ridiculous." Jason sighed, looking mildly helpless. He pulled me into his arms, leaned close to my ear, and spoke in a low voice. "You're right. It shouldn't develop like this. I should have just done this and that to you already, instead of standing here listening to you ramble on." The warm breath against my ear made it itch. I laughed softly and dodged away. "Lex," he said seriously, "don't play that substitute nonsense with me. If you love someone, you can only love me, Jason Carter." For some reason, my ears felt strangely warm. I wasn't sure if it was embarrassment or something else. "Got it," I muttered. "You're really edgy right now. I'm going to record this and show it to you once your memory comes back." Jason shrugged, completely unconcerned. "Go ahead. Fighting for love isn't embarrassing." Jason Carter: "Why is it that you always make me uncontrollably start imagining our future together?" Everything moved forward steadily, just as planned. The wedding preparations began on schedule. Uncle and Auntie Carter handled almost everything for me. But the one thing I was supposed to take care of myself got stuck right from the start. I didn't want to invite my family. What I didn't expect was for my mother to come looking for me anyway. She showed up dragging along a slouchy middle school boy with an impatient-looking girl trailing behind her. The moment she opened her mouth, she asked bluntly, "You're getting married? How much is the bride price?" My expression stayed calm as I replied evenly, "I'm a man. There is no bride price." She grabbed my arm, gripping it hard enough to hurt. "Don't play dumb. I know you're the one acting as the woman in that relationship. How could there be no bride price?" I kept my face under control as I slowly pried her fingers off my arm. "I said there isn't one. The allowance I send you every month is already more than enough. Anything else is none of your concern." Her voice suddenly shot up, sharp and shrill. "What do you mean it's none of my concern? I'm your mother. I carried you for 10 months and gave birth to you." I clenched my fists tightly, forcing myself to stay calm. "Yes, you gave birth to me. Otherwise, someone like you, who sends a high schooler into an old man's bed, should have been sitting in prison long ago, not standing in front of me now, greedily making demands." By the end, my voice still rose despite myself. A woman who, upon learning her son was gay, shoved her own child into the bed of her husband's client. What right did she have to shout, "I'm your mother"? The woman in front of me clearly faltered, guilt flashing across her face, but she still refused to give up, shoving the slightly older girl toward me. "Hey, your sister's grown up now. Your partner must be surrounded by rich executives, right? Introduce her to a few." I let out an impatient sigh, already done dealing with her. But she persisted, coming up with an even worse idea. "If that won't work, then let your sister be a surrogate for your partner. Families like his are so rich, there's no way they'd really be okay without a biological child." At that, the middle school boy snorted, casting a mocking glance at the sister who was only a bit older than him, his eyes filled with undisguised ridicule. The girl looked pale and sickly, but she lowered her head and didn't dare say a word. I was so angry I actually laughed, my tone no longer calm at all. "Do you even know that surrogacy is illegal? Are you not going to stop until you end up in jail?" "Surrogacy? What surrogacy?" Hearing that familiar voice was like having cold water poured over my head. I instantly calmed down and turned around. As expected, it was Jason Carter. "So you're Mr. Carter," my mother said quickly, switching tactics. "I'm Lex's mother. My son isn't very capable. He's caused you trouble." Jason smiled faintly and didn't reach out to shake her hand. "Not at all," he said evenly. "Lex is outstanding. If anything, I should be the one thanking him." My mother awkwardly pulled her hand back, her smile stiff for a moment, but she recovered quickly and shoved the girl forward again. Just as she was about to speak, Jason raised a hand, stopping her. "I know exactly what you want to say. First, there is no one around me who would lay a hand on a minor, and I certainly wouldn't be the kind of scum who facilitates something like that. Second, I don't need a surrogate. We can adopt children or donate money to charity. There's no rule that says we must have a biological heir. And third, if you continue to harass my partner, he may be soft-hearted and bound by morals, but I am not." As he finished speaking, several security guards suddenly appeared behind him. The scene felt a little surreal, but undeniably effective. In the end, my mother grudgingly dragged the others away. I pulled the pen and notepaper Jason always kept in his breast pocket, scribbled a few words, and chased after them. When I came back, Jason was still standing there, waiting for me. Before he could ask anything, I explained, I slipped my sister a note. Even though we don't share the same father, I think she might need someone to help her escape. You should do whatever you want to do, Jason said without hesitation. I support everything you choose. Just those few words, and it felt as if the man I once knew had come back to me again. I stared at him absent-mindedly until he finally asked, "What's wrong?" I shook my head and snapped back to my senses. "It's nothing. Sorry you had to see all that today." See all that? He looked genuinely puzzled. Why would that be embarrassing? I already knew about these things. I tilted my head, confused. How did you know? I never told you about any of this. Don't tell me you. Before the question could fully form, Jason Carter somehow produced another one of those garishly red and purple books from who knows where. It's all written in the book, he said matter-of-factly. Behind every stubborn yet resilient little white lotus, there's always a shattered family. All right, I take it back. I never should have doubted him. If Jason could lose his memory and still say something like that with a straight face, then the 8 years I spent loving him before this really weren't wasted after all. I laughed softly and shook my head. All right, fine. I'll admit that book has some substance to it. Then, Mr. CEO, would you be willing to have lunch with this little white lotus? Jason Carter raised an eyebrow. Inviting me to lunch on your own initiative? Man, you should know. One meal isn't enough to satisfy me. I burst out laughing, quickly covering his mouth while glancing around. Lower your voice. Is that something you should be saying out loud? If one meal isn't enough, then we'll eat two. Honestly. The corners of Jason's eyes curved as well, and he mumbled against my palm, No, only eating you would be enough. After lunch, I started guiding Jason through the business again, helping him re-familiarize himself with the workflow. Strangely enough, even though he'd lost his memory, he picked things up incredibly fast. Was this what talent looked like? That afternoon, an important client was coming in. After repeatedly emphasizing the focus of the meeting and the necessary business etiquette to Jason, I finally felt reassured enough to go with him to receive the guest. What I didn't expect was that the other party didn't seem to care much about any of that. Alex. The moment he arrived, Jordan Wilson called out to me familiarly. Maintaining a polite smile, I subtly reached out and took Jason's hand, guiding him forward. President Wilson, your timing is perfect, I said smoothly. Today happens to be President Carter's first day back at work, and he's fully prepared to welcome you. Jordan Wilson cast a somewhat discourteous glance at Jason before quickly returning his gaze to me. Oh, President Carter is back, he said lightly. But I think this project should still be handled by Alex. Whether publicly or privately, you're the most suitable person. I assume President Carter wouldn't mind, would he? My smile didn't waver. President Wilson, you're joking, I said calmly. I was only following up on this project on President Carter's behalf. Now that President Carter has recovered, it wouldn't be appropriate for me to overstep anymore. Jason let out an undisguised sk, and several surprised gazes immediately turned toward him. My heart skipped. Oh no, was his domineering CEO mode about to activate? Sure enough, Jason yanked me behind him and put on a smile that looked almost eerily artificial. Why would I mind? He said lightly. Alex and I are getting married soon anyway. The company is a joint venture between the two of us. If he's running projects for our household, of course I'll support him. I sucked in a sharp breath and shut my eyes as if refusing to face reality. All those years of keeping our relationship under wraps at the company, completely wasted. Whispers immediately erupted around us. My coworkers sounded downright excited. Jordan Wilson frowned. Married? Why so sudden? He demanded. Alex, what's going on here? Maybe we should focus on business first, I said quickly. This kind of personal matter can wait. Darling, Jason cut in sweetly, can't we just tell him we're in love? I stared at him in disbelief, eyes wide, as he looked back at me with pure innocence. Before I could say anything, Jordan stepped forward emotionally. You're in love? On what grounds? I've been pursuing Alex for 3 years. If anyone gets a turn, it should be me. 3 years and you think it's your turn? Jason scoffed. As far as I know, Alex and I have worked together for 5 years. The computer in my office has spent more time with him than you have. You're talking about turns while daydreaming? And just like that, 2 company presidents started bickering, loudly, undignified, and completely lacking decorum. The gossip from nearby coworkers only grew louder. I finally snapped. I shoved myself between the two men, teeth clenched. This is a workplace. Personal matters are prohibited. Are we canceling the project or not? Jordan spat into the air and muttered under his breath. Sneaking around with someone from your own company. Shameless. Jason immediately spat back just as rudely. Coveting someone else's husband. Despicable. Their gazes locked again, sparks flying. Honestly, one slap each wouldn't be excessive right now, but Jordan was still an important client, so I could only tug lightly at Jason's sleeve. President Carter, please mind the company's image. Jason turned his head away, clearly unwilling but holding back. I then put on my professional smile again and turned to Jordan. Sorry to let you see this, I said politely. Please wait in the reception room for a moment. We'll have the meeting room and documents ready shortly. The meeting, somehow, had to go on. Inside Jason Carter's office, the look of stubborn dissatisfaction still hadn't left his face. And I was angry now, too. How could you talk to a client like that? I demanded. Do you have any idea how important this project is? Is this really something you can afford to treat so casually? Jason frowned and stood up. His intentions toward you were obvious, he said bluntly. Was I supposed to pretend I didn't see it? Losing this project won't cause any real damage to our company, but losing you... He paused, jaw tightening. That's not acceptable. I let out a quiet sigh. That line, meant to be affectionate, brought me no comfort at all. Only a deep sense of exhaustion. You weren't like this before, I said softly. How did you become so unable to tell what really matters? The old me? Jason scoffed. I don't care what the old me was like. All I know is this. Right now, you're mine, and I won't allow anyone with ulterior motives anywhere near you. I looked at him. Childish, stubborn. And suddenly a strange feeling welled up in my chest. Jason Carter, I said slowly. Just because you've read a few domineering CEO novels, does that really mean you can like me this much? That you can treat me as if I belong to you? That you can be so sure we're destined to like each other? He fell silent for a moment. The doubt in my heart only grew heavier. It's not just the novels, he finally said. I've seen someone silently crying outside my hospital room day after day. I've seen someone hide deep exhaustion behind a smile. I've seen someone show up with home-cooked meals no matter the wind or rain. He looked straight at me. Alex, I may have lost my memory, but I can still recognize love in someone's eyes. You like me, so why won't you admit it? Why won't you show it to others? His voice dropped. It feels like I'm the only one being sincere. My chest tightened, emotions swirling into something bitter and complicated. The last time we'd argued this fiercely, he'd said something very similar back then, too. But what if one day we end up separating? Wouldn't all this openly exposed affection just turn into a joke then? Just like my mother's 3 marriages. Every single one of them ended in mutual destruction. Heterosexual relationships already turn out like that. So what about same-sex ones? Let's calm down for now, I said quietly. If a problem can't be solved, then avoid it first. That was the self-preservation I'd learned over many years. Coward! I looked at Jason Carter in shock. Why are you insulting me? I'm insulting you, he said without hesitation. I don't care how the old me swallowed his anger and endured things. But right now, Alex, if you want to retreat, if you want to abandon me, then no. That's not happening. He pulled me into his arms with overwhelming force as if he wanted to grind me into his very bones. Alex, he said hoarsely, don't leave me, okay? Slowly, I gave in and wrapped my arms around him in return. I had no right to abandon anyone, when the one who had always been afraid of being abandoned was me. After finally muddling through the workday, I headed toward the underground parking garage, both physically and mentally exhausted. The moment I sat down in the driver's seat, someone jumped straight into the passenger seat. Who else could it be but Jason Carter? I looked at him, baffled. What are you doing? Going home with you, he said matter-of-factly. Can a boss do a home visit to his subordinate? I wasn't a grade schooler. What kind of home visit was this? Besides, the place I was heading back to was filled with traces of the life Jason and I had once shared. If the current him noticed those details, who knew what kind of interrogation I'd be in for? No, go back to your own place. I'm not going. We stared each other down, neither of us willing to back off. I don't want to go back to those houses, he said suddenly. They're all empty. They don't feel like homes I should be living in. I'd already softened inside, but I still struggled a little. But my place is empty too, I said quietly. It's just me there. Jason grinned shamelessly and buckled his seatbelt. Then add one more person, and it won't be empty anymore. I sighed in defeat and started the car. The whole drive, Jason chattered nonstop. One moment, he was worrying about whether my place could even fit 2 people. The next, he was saying that in the campus novels he'd read, rich young masters always loved those shabby but warm, lived-in homes, so there was no way he'd look down on mine. I was so speechless I nearly laughed, the corner of my mouth lifting the entire way. Finally, I parked under a tall apartment building. "All right, young master," I said, getting out of the car. "Come take a look at my rundown little place." Jason's face flushed slightly, but he still coughed twice and kept up his tough act. It doesn't look that broken. I suppose I'll take a look." I really wanted to flick him on the forehead. Once inside, I naturally took off my coat and hung it up, then casually peeled Jason's jacket off him and hung that up as well. Realizing that I was acting a little too naturally, I hurriedly tried to cover it up. Just come in and sit wherever. Make yourself at home." The very next second, Jason Carter spotted a photo frame on the TV cabinet and pointed at it sharply. "Why do you have a photo of the 2 of us displayed in your place?" He turned to me. "What, are you secretly in love with me?" See? There was no way this place could hide anything from him. "Well," I said hesitantly, "if that's how you want to think about it, then you're not wrong." Jason ignored me and started wandering around the apartment, commentary included. "Your slippers come in 2 different sizes, and look, this bigger pair fits me perfectly. You even use 2 toothbrush cups, and they're a matching set. You've got so many watches here. I've never seen you wear them. Why do they look so similar to the one I'm wearing? And your wardrobe, why are there clothes in 2 sizes? Wait a second, this fits me exactly." I leaned against the walk-in closet doorway, watching him rummage around with visible excitement. "All right, that's enough," I said. "Stop digging, they're all for you." Jason walked over until our faces were almost touching. "So you like me that much, huh?" "Yeah." He broke into a smile. Like he'd just discovered something fascinating. "You actually dared to admit it. How rare." At the familiar dining table, with the familiar person across from me. Ever since Jason Carter's accident, this was the first time I could finally sit down and eat dinner in peace. Jason was still the same as ever. He absolutely had to play with his phone while eating. Halfway through the meal, he suddenly spoke. "Hey, did you know my phone got smashed when the accident happened?" I nodded with a mouthful of food. Of course I knew. Otherwise, how could I have hidden things from him for so long? "I asked my parents to send it in for repairs," he continued casually. "They said it's fixed now. I'm going to pick it up tomorrow." The food in my mouth suddenly became hard to swallow. I gulped down several mouthfuls of water before finally forcing it down. After dinner, there's something I want to talk to you about." Jason looked up at me, and I instinctively lowered my gaze, guilt creeping in. After dinner, on the couch, I sat with my head lowered, anxiously digging my nails into my fingers. "So what you're saying is," Jason said slowly, "we were actually in a relationship, and because you were afraid I'd change my sexual orientation after losing my memory, you never told me the truth." He sat in the main seat of the sofa, his presence sharp, like he was interrogating a suspect. "Yeah, Alex," he said flatly, "you're something else." "But my concerns weren't completely unreasonable, were they?" I murmured. "And what was your plan then?" he pressed on. "To go along with it and erase everything we had? Resign and run away? Let my parents arrange a wedding for me, marry someone I don't love, then wait until my memory comes back so I can suffer endlessly, living the rest of my life full of regret?" "It's not that serious," I said weakly. "I don't understand," he said, eyes fixed on me. "Was it because I didn't love you enough before that you ended up thinking this way? I don't think so. If I hadn't loved you enough, we wouldn't have made it this far." He paused. "There's only one possibility left, Alex. The problem is with you." He was right, as expected of Jason Carter, straight to the point, every single time. I had nothing left to say, but he refused to let it go. "Let me think," Jason Carter said slowly. "Just in the past few days alone, there's been Jacob, the cousin who orders you around and gets indulged for it. My sister, who you might secretly see as some kind of white moonlight. The family background you deliberately kept from me. And Jordan Wilson openly using work as an excuse to pursue you." He paused, then looked straight at me. "If I'm not wrong, back then, we must have been in a relationship that existed in the shadows, because you asked for it. You chose to shoulder everything silently, always ready to pull away at any moment. And I was the one who went along with all your decisions, afraid that being too forceful would scare you off. Am I right?" I nodded. That did seem exactly right. Then what we had wasn't mutual devotion, Jason concluded quietly. It was two people drifting farther and farther apart. I had nothing to say in response. What could I say? The belief I'd always held, that letting go is the highest form of love, seemed to completely fall apart when placed in front of Jason. He stood up and walked over to me, then knelt halfway down in front of me. Sometimes, he said softly, I really wish we were as simple as the people in those books. You hide, you run, and I just lock you up without hesitation. Even if our emotions became a tangled mess, at least we'd still be bound together for a lifetime. He grabbed my wrist as if that thought had genuinely crossed his mind. But compared to my urge to possess you, he continued, voice lowering, I think I want you to be happy even more. Even if the person standing beside you isn't me. Doesn't that make me pathetic? Even with amnesia, I still can't forget to love you in a way that puts you first. I pulled my wrist free, then turned around and held his hand instead. I'm the pathetic one, I said hoarsely. Jason, I'm not born a coward. I've thought about staying with you forever too, but every voice around me keeps telling me it's impossible. By the end, my voice was trembling. For the first time, I wasn't the Alex who'd grown sharp and defensive from being hurt over and over again, but a clumsy young man, completely at a loss when faced with his first love, something he should have cherished. Jason lifted his hand and gently covered my ears. Don't listen to them, he said. Just listen to me. Alex, listen to me. I love you. Even if I lose my memory 1,000 times, 10,000 times, I'll still fall in love with you again. Every single time. I never thought there would come a day when I'd cry my eyes out over a line that sounded so embarrassingly cliché. Strangely enough, after crying my heart out like that, I felt much lighter inside. It was as if I'd been injected with an endless reserve of courage, enough to keep moving forward. That night, Jason Carter and I talked for a long, long time. I told him everything about our past, recounting moment after moment, carefully listing all the ways he'd been good to me. In the end, he smiled and propped his chin on his hand, looking at me. You remember all that so clearly, he said. Is it because I loved you that much, or because you loved me that much? My face grew warm, and I turned away, refusing to look at him. He leaned over and wrapped his arms around me. Go to sleep. I won't tease you anymore. After a long while, I opened my eyes. Jason? Are you asleep? Yeah. Then, I love you. Jason buried his face in the ends of my hair, his voice muffled. Me too. I closed my eyes, but couldn't stop the smile that crept onto my lips. Saying words like that once in a while actually felt pretty nice. The wedding was ultimately postponed, because I didn't want to marry Jason Carter in such a muddled way, using treatment as an excuse. I wanted to wait until his memories returned. I wanted to be with a complete Jason, openly, properly, and without any reservations. Strangely enough, after I was honest with his parents about our relationship and my decision, they accepted it almost immediately. So calmly that I didn't quite know how to react. That was it. Even stranger, only a month later, Jason announced that his memories had returned. I didn't quite believe him. But when I asked about the past, he answered everything flawlessly. He even remembered what I'd been wearing the first time we met. Even though it felt rushed, I still pulled out the ring I'd saved up to buy, my palms slick with sweat. It's a bit sudden, I said, my voice unsteady, but I always planned to say this once your memories came back. Jason Carter, would you be willing to be with me? The kind that lasts a lifetime. Jason froze for a moment, then he covered his mouth exaggeratedly, letting out a dramatic gasp. But I saw it clearly. His eyes were already glistening. Really? He asked softly. Is this for me? I nodded, opened the ring box, and slipped the ring onto his finger. Jason lifted his hand high, turning it left and right, admiring it with theatrical seriousness. What could possibly make our Mr. Alex this romantic today? I smiled helplessly, but still answered him honestly. Because I really, really love you. The mature, steady Jason taught me how to grow sharp thorns to protect myself. And the childish, ridiculous Jason taught me something else, that the world isn't made up only of pain that requires armor. More often than not, it's filled with moments that ask us to say I love you out loud. Extra 1, Jason Carter at 20, Sharon Carter at 23. At 23, Sharon Carter was already a graduate student, yet she still couldn't figure out her biological younger brother, who was 3 years younger than her. Sis, I'm begging you, Jason Carter pleaded, despite already being 20, clinging to her arm and acting spoiled. Could you please put a little more effort into that person I told you about? Sharon looked helplessly at the sight before her. A grown man shamelessly acting cute, asking his sister to help look after the person he liked. If you want to help him so badly, why don't you just go yourself? She said. Why do you keep dragging me into this? Jason pouted. Because he's your direct junior, he said seriously. I'm afraid I'll scare him off. We barely talked during the 3 years we were in high school together, and now it's even worse. Oh, all right, Sharon interrupted, waving her hand. Stop looking so pitiful. I'll help, okay? What's his name again? Jason instantly lit up. Hey, thanks, sis. His name is Alex. Extra 2. Jason Carter at 28, Sharon Carter at 31. At 31, Sharon Carter was already a postdoctoral researcher and had a boyfriend of her own, and yet she still couldn't understand her younger brother at all. She looked at Jason, who was staring at the ring on his finger with a mysterious, blissful smile, and felt a wave of second-hand embarrassment. Tell me honestly, she said. Have you really remembered everything? Of course not, Jason replied casually. I just said that so I could hurry up and marry your brother-in-law. And he just believed you? What's there not to believe? Jason shrugged. I memorized all our chat logs. Even if he didn't believe me, he had no choice. You're unbelievable. Thanks for the compliment, Jason said smugly. For the sake of being with him, this is nothing. After showing off for a bit, Jason suddenly sighed. But after rereading our messages, I realized I really had it rough. Oh? Sharon raised an eyebrow. How so? I didn't even dare to say it directly when I was jealous, and whenever he had problems, he never told me. I always had to ask indirectly, circling around the topic. He paused, then laughed. Honestly, I'm just glad I went all in when I didn't know anything a few days ago. Otherwise, who knows how long it would have taken me to trick your brother-in-law back. Sharon rolled her eyes and decided, right then and there, to permanently bury the fact that, back in the day, Alex had been the one who approached her younger brother first. Jason Carter absolutely could not be allowed to find out that even before those 5 years of love, someone else had already fallen first.